Hello and welcome to Encore, France 24's daily culture show. I'm Melissa Bell. We're talking music today and looking at a couple of new releases. One by an old hand who you'll recognise. At 68, Iggy Pop's releasing his new album, Post-Pop Depression, this week. An album recorded secretly last year that he says could well be his last. We're also going to be hearing about the up-and-coming Alessia Cara. Her debut album, Know It All, has just come out here in Europe. She'll be telling France 24 all about it. And our guest today is a man who'd composed 3 symphonies by the tender age of 22, none other than the conductor and composer Matthias Pinter. Thanks very much for being with us today. Delighted you could join us. We have the pleasure of meeting today with Matthias Pinter, musical director at the Ensemble Intercontemporain, who'll be playing at the Philarmonie de Paris on March 23rd, also on April 9th. We're delighted that you should have made some time for us today. Also with us here at France 24, in the France 24 studios, Mark Thompson, our music critic, for a look at some of the week's releases. First of all, we're going to have a look at some of Matthias Pinter's work. Just a quick taster for you there of Matthias Pinter conducting with the Ensemble Intercontemporain. I'd like to take you back, though. I mentioned in the headlines that you'd written 3 symphonies by the age of 22, which I find absolutely staggering when you consider what most of us have done by the time we're 22. A year later, you conducted your first ballet. Had you always known? Did you know from when you were a tiny child that this was what you're going to do?
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't say tiny child. I mean, when I was a tiny child, my parents were dragging me to the piano at the age of 5, but then when I turned 10, then I made my first conscious decision. I wanted to learn the violin because that's really something that helped me to discover what the physicality of sound production is. And since then, I would say when I was 13, 14, I knew that I would be a musician, which is a great privilege because I didn't have to take all the detours. I was just going straight forward. And I feel blessed that I could pursue this since then. And
you went from playing violin and piano to composing and conducting, which is not something that everyone does. How do you combine both the classical and contemporary artists at the same time?
Well, the tradition goes way back, and I think in former times, Gustav Mahler, even Mendelssohn and Brahms and all the composers were also conducting. So now we just have the opportunity to look back at a much larger repertoire because, you know, a lot of music has been conceived since. So, and I think even for the youngest generation nowadays, it becomes more and more challenging because there's such a tremendous variety and diversity of styles. So it's probably very hard nowadays to start to make a first decision of where you start to invent music. But for me, it was always a privilege to be working equally in both disciplines because the performing clearly informs my writing. The writing informs me looking at a Brahms symphony. It helps me to communicate music and to present it and to understand what this is and how it comes together.
You work between both worlds. You also travel the world a great deal. We've been talking about the fact that you live sort of between New York and Paris and other cities. You left Germany quite young. Was that necessary?
I wouldn't say it was necessary, but I was always very attached to French culture, and I clearly fell in love with everything that this country has to offer, which is not only architecture and literature and poetry and music, but also the gastronomic elements of it. So I felt always a lot more at ease being here and immersing myself in everything French than the German background. But I've lived in so many places and countries since then. Now I live in New York for 8 years, and it feels most at home, I have to say, because it's a wonderful combination and mix of everything.
And one of your other loves, as well as travelling in music, is contemporary art. Do you think that contemporary art informs your music as well as other musicians?
Oh, it clearly did. I would say in the last decade, the last 10 years, also really knowing more about contemporary art and making friends with a lot of contemporary artists like Amzan Kifa, who is has a big show at the Centre Pompidou. He has tremendously influenced my work as a composer. And it's interesting whenever you talk to a colleague who is a painter or who draws, that in the end, we're all dealing with the same phenomena in what we do. Just the technique is different, but it's the same. So I love to, accept that it's a huge inspiration to take something from the visual arts and try to translate it into the sonic phenomena.
Well, let's talk about a mentor of yours as well. You're the musical director at the Ensemble Intercontemporain here in Paris. And this January, Pierre Boulez, the founder of that group, passed away. Just what legacy did he leave behind?
He left a tremendous legacy for all of us. For me personally, because over the last 15 years, he became not only a strong mentor, but also a very close friend. And there was no other major mastermind of his generation that has always been so generous in being willing and ready to share his time, to share his thoughts, and to pass it on. The Philarmonie de Paris, the IRCAM, our ensemble, the Ensemble Intercontemporain, the Lucerne Festival Academy, all these institutions would not exist without him. I'm not even speaking about his compositions, but he was not building monuments for himself. His goal was really to initiate something, to create something that would assure that there is a future and continuation of what we do, which is communicate the music of our time.
And we're going to move on to some of the week's releases. Just before we end on that, you were mentioning there, of course, again, the Ensemble Intercontemporain. It is at the Philarmonie de Paris next week, March 23rd, that is, and also on the 9th of April, if you have a chance of being in Paris and want to catch that. We're going to have a look now at some of the latest releases in the pop and rock world. You said that classical music can learn a lot from pop music. Presumably listen to the stuff as well.
I don't know a lot about it, but yet I listen to it too. I mean, I would actually say I'm not even listening to Brahms symphonies on a CD anymore. If I actually do listen to something on a DVD or on iTunes, then it's pop music. Yeah.
Iggy Pop, are you a fan?
I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I appreciate it.
Well, we're gonna be hearing about what he's been up to. The 68-year-old is back with a new record, and he's got something of a supergroup as a backing band these days, hasn't he, Mark?
He does. The everlasting image of Iggy Pop is him running around shirtless on stage as part of the Stooges, this incredible dynamic punk artist. Now he's 68 years old right now, so I mean, most people would think maybe stop doing that, but he's still at it. This album, which might be his last, it would be a big shame if it was, but it's a lot calmer, it's a lot more subdued. The last time that he collaborated with an artist with flaming red hair was back in the 70s with David Bowie, and we ended up with Lust for Life, which was full of drive and energy. This is less so. This is more it's considered, and it's more patient in the way that it comes across. It has actually grown on me. This time he's collaborated with Josh Homme, who is the frontman for Queens of the Stone Age, a huge rock act. I think it does work together, but at the same time, I feel like they're two pineapples trying to be a pear, and the spikes actually look good on them, so I think they should keep to that. And let's have a quick look at the single from this record.
Up and coming. Everything about her is new, the way she's come to the attention of the world, her age. Tell us a little bit about Alessia Cara. You've been speaking to her.
Yes, Alessia Cara is 19 now, but she was first talent spotted when she was 13. She's part of this new wave of Canadian artists coming through that's taking over the American landscape. We've got Drake, we've got The Weeknd, we've got Justin Bieber. And like Justin, she was someone who was spotted by putting up their own covers and her own songs on YouTube. She was then picked up at 13, and she spent 6 years being crafted into this pop star that we're now seeing in front of us. Her latest single, Wild Things, racked up 1 million views within a week. Here came out with 70 million views plus. It's just numbers I can't even get my head around now, let alone a 19-year-old. Let's have a quick look at our interview with Alessia Cara.
Disclaimer, they're not as good when there's people around because I get nervous. Okay, this is Lord sitting in front of you. There's a humming in the restless summer air, and we're slipping off the course that we prepared. But in our chaos there's calculation, dropping glasses just to hear them break. That's
actually really good.
Thank you.
I saw her a couple of years ago. It's
Really?
pretty spot on, yeah.
I think she's a little raspier, but I don't want to exaggerate it too much. But she has a great voice. I love her. I love impersonating her because she's cool.
And that's Alessia Cara doing her interpretation of Lord, and you can see much more of our interview with her on France 24.
And we're going to be speaking a little bit about female artists now, and I'd like to ask you, Matthias, why so many conductors are male before we move on to this festival we're about to talk about?
It has changed. There's a lot of conducting women nowadays, and I think it's a blessing because finally that cliche that a conductor needs to be male has been completely destroyed, if I may even use a strong word.
And you think we're going to see more and more of them?
Absolutely, especially in the last couple of years, there has been emerging like a really whole bunch of wonderful, wonderful female conductors who are equally fascinating and strong and powerful.
You're going to tell us a little bit more before we go about this festival here in France, showcasing some of the best up-and-coming female artists.
Yes, Les Femmes Sont Mêlées. It's the 19th edition of this incredible festival. We've seen great artists like Christine and the Queens, MIA, come through here. And actually, most recently, we had Courtney Barnett, who was nominated for a Grammy last year. This time round, we have Agua Roja, which is a French band I've been focusing on for the last 6 months or so. Their new album is going to be coming out in the next year or so. But we also have Claire Vincent, who is a local artist from the a community of musicians known as Midnight Special Records, and they have a little place in my heart.
And we're going to have a little listen to it in just a moment. I'd like to thank you, first of all, very much, Matthias Pinter, for being our guest. It was a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you, Mark Johnson. Look there at what's coming up and what's hot at the moment. That brings us to the end of today's Encore. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. Here's a quick look then at this clip recorded for us by Claire Vincent, who gave us a sneak preview of what fans can expect. See you soon.
Pas de feu en toi, il me consume à chaque